Outstanding. We are live, and welcome
Hola.
everyone
Okay.
to a Word Balloon Live conversation. John Suntress here. I am
Hi, John.
and hi Howard. It's Howard Chaykin, everybody. Good to see you, buddy.
As well. Good to see you. It's nice to see we're both at least in what passes for reasonable health.
Indeed, man, and I'm glad that you're doing okay. Believe me.
You're in Chicago, yes?
I am, sir. I wanted to talk about one of the things, and we'll get to it in a second. Your time in Chicago and First Comics and the American flag era.
My time in Chicago preceded First Comics, but that's another story entirely.
Okay, yes, and shame on me. I remember this from our dinner.
That's right. That's right.
So excellent, man. I just talked to Mike Gold Friday. Yeah.
Did you lose a bet or some shit or what? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. That was unkind. Oh.
He'd take it. He'd roll with it and everything.
Oh yeah, no. Mike and I go back a ways. There is mutual respect.
That's excellent, man. You're cracking me up. Hey, where to begin? I mean,
I saw you had a list of questions from these people.
Oh yeah.
By which I mean so many various subsets, of course.
Indeed, Facebook.
Actually, let me share with you a gift from Joe Jusko just before we go on.
Please.
This is a gift that Joe gave me.
All right. Short eyeballs. I can't read it. Tell me how.
It says, "I am a constant fucking delight," and it's true. Thank you, Joe.
Oh man, first I know a lot of people were wondering what the status is of Hey Kids Comics because
are they really? Does anybody really give a shit? I don't think so, but it's nice of you to say that they do.
Well, Howard, I know I was waiting, and also
okay. Well, I mean, I'm actually working on issue 10 as we speak.
Okay.
It's written up to 11. Issue 6 through 11 cover in a more linear way the decades between 1950 and 1980.
Interesting.
You'll see characters from the previous series, but also it introduces a whole slew of new characters. And the franchise of the second series, as the franchise of the first series, of those for the 11 of you who've actually read the book, the rest of you can ask them, is about the misidentification and misunderstanding of the value of the work produced, and the discovery that what you thought was a transitional way station before you went on to the thing you were supposed to be doing for the rest of your life was the labor of your life. The second arc is about I see Robert Lee Jefferson Kofel there. There he is, Robert. The second arc is about the infantilization of the material and the audience, and an entirely new set of characters, new people misunderstanding completely the value of the work they were doing and what the work meant.
Sure.
And the third arc will be about the sort of the end of ambition in comics, but that hasn't been done yet.
Interesting. Wow, man. Yeah. The end of ambition. Wow.
Yeah, well, comics ceased to be ambitious many years ago. The patronizing, pandering, fatuous, incredulous junk that people seem to suck up with a straw supports that lack of ambition.
Don't you think, though? I mean,
no, not hardly enough about this. But please go on.
Don't you think, though? Honestly, in the last, I don't know, maybe 25 years, alongside superheroes, we've got not only great underground comics, certainly, but also, blankets and some of the other.
I'm only talking about mainstream material. I mean, the other side stuff. One of the elements that emerged in my research. Look, the Comics Code Authority comes along basically to destroy, to protect a group of German Jews from work imposed upon them by a bunch of transgressive Russian Jews. And in the course of doing this, it ruins Bill Gaines, but oddly enough, it gives Gaines a turn to make and change his life professionally. But also wrecks a bunch of bargain basement sleazeballs who were knocking off in the worst way Gaines's most successful product. In the course of doing this, it infantilizes the material, but also infantilizes the audience. It drives away anybody who's seeking anything other than the most banal and adolescent of the material. These guys who were driven away return 10, 15 years later as the underground. Mm-hmm. But significantly, there's nobody in that underground movement, with a couple of exceptions like Corbin, who comes in with a sort of a cross index of of the science fiction books and the horror books. Grizzly, who's actually a really good friend of mine under his real name, and I'm not sure I should identify him as such. And Jack Jackson, you know. And remember that Corbin was excoriated by Bill Griffith. They hated his stuff so much. And Jack Jackson was never a great draftsman, but he had enormous conviction and heart. So there was nobody. I mean, if you accept EC as the locus, the vector, the single most important comic book company to exist after Will Eisner's quality books, and I believe that is true. Of course, the most successful of those books was the shittiest, the horror books. I was taken to task recently on the Facebook by a guy who insisted that Kirsten wasn't the genius and that the important books that they published were the horror books. But I mean, the horror books were adolescent junk. and as a kid, I loved the science fiction stuff, but I barely look at them now. The stuff I look at all the time is Kurtzman's work, the work that Johnny Craig did on Crime Suspense.
Oh yeah,
and a lot of Wallace Wood's work on Shock Suspense, which of course is my house is known as Liberal Hysteria Comics. Many or most of my generation believed that we were the rebirth. We would be the rebirth of the EC enterprise and franchise. And I personally believed, and I shared this belief with other men of my generation, that we would outlive superhero comic books. Because we identified superhero comic books as being done by people our father's age. And they were done by guys who played golf and smoked cigars and, you know, and played poker and did all this like Rat Packy bullshit.
Sure.
That was the antithesis of what we cared about. And what happened was we were all blindsided by the arrival a couple of years after we came on the scene by a couple of guys whose arrival coincided with the loosening of his grip on the reins of Marvel Comics that Stan Lee did when he handed over much more of the responsibility to Roy Thomas and Mike Friedrich and Gary Friedrich rather, and those cats,
okay,
who came in and didn't have to be bent to the wheel of Stan Lee's, you know, manipulation and use of Jack Kirby's franchise, but instead could bend that wheel to themselves, you know, and it took us completely by surprise, and none of us ever really recovered. The men who came in after us, a couple of them had enormous technical facility, but it seemed like technical facility that had nothing to do with what Stan wanted. But it didn't matter anymore because Stan wasn't there to want. You know, it was something else. And I have spent my entire life, you know, I was the biggest superhero comic book fan you ever saw, just like all of us. I mean, I've said more than once recently and over the years that comic book professionalism is more in common with the Jesuitry than it does with movie fandom or television fandom or even rock and roll fandom. It is an inoculative curse. You are trapped by it. And in that regard, I grew up obsessed with Julie Schwartz's books. I never knew Julie's name. I knew the guy who drew the stuff. I knew Gill's stuff, Kubert's, Murphy Anderson, Carmine Infantino, Alex Toth. I loved that work so much. But then when Stan and Jack come along, holy shit, this is like, I've never seen anything like this. This is fabulous. Oh my God. And I became an evangelist in this work for my fellow comic book enthusiasts. We all grew up. We were all syndicalists. I don't know about you. Did you grow up with a syndicate? A bunch of guys hanging around talking about this shit. Couldn't get laid, but well, you were 12. But you know,
but yeah, I mean, you know, we had our DC and Marvel fans.
Yeah. You know, so I mean, I evangelized the Marvel stuff outrageously to people. Of course, I'm the only one who still has anything to do with this stuff. All these guys have outgrown that. And when I occasionally drop their names in context, I barely get shamed silence from these people. It's great.
That's interesting as the culture has gravitated towards superheroes with the movies and television shows. I'm always interested, honestly, on people older than me. You're not that much older than me, man.
How old are you, John?
I'm 55 now.
I'm pushing 70, motherfucker. So I'm a lot older than you. It makes a big difference.
Okay,
that's 3 generations. If you break out if the species of generation is 40 years, I'm 3 generations past your ass.
I'm hip, but I guess
you're hip. I'm me too.
No,
look at us.
You know, I mean I understand hip, but yeah,
I know you
exactly.
Do. I know you do.
And I always say it. It's I don't know. That's always stuck with me, Beatnik boy. But I've always
I grew up with a bunch of hipsters. An older cousin
who
my pets were black for 15 years.
There you go, man. Well, that's the thing, man.
Bobby Hollywood.
I have older cousins and older brothers and stuff. So, you know, I
And
was
you're from
handed,
Chicago, which is a pretty fucking hip town.
well, but I was also handed a bunch of, like, you know, I mean, I read the Doc Savage paperbacks and the Shadow reprint paperbacks and a lot of
Not
the
me,
stuff.
not me. That shit's unreadable.
Well, I'm saying when I was a kid.
It is, as we call it in my house, chazarai.
And grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, so there
I
you
know
go.
you
But
did
also, but yeah, I am fascinated by the generations older than me, and especially the ones that have worked in comics and stuff, who's still reading, who likes, and again, not just necessarily superhero stuff, but again, gravitating to the other stuff. I mean, I still like a fun superhero story, an interesting one, a Tom King, Adam Strange story, or a Batman story. But I also
I'm in a
like.
coma right now. I'm waiting for me to be revived.
Oh, I understand. No, but honestly, man, I mean, truly, I was reading your stuff alongside that stuff in the '80s, still do, and am thrilled when the other genres are being explored today.
You know, there are things that I respond to. I mean, I just recently read a new book by Stefan Frank, that I've been promoting on my Facebook page, called Palomino, which I really dig, and it's the first book that's come along since Scalp that interested me.
Interesting. Okay.
You know, and a lot of it is that I like comics that create a world, a mise en scène that I can respond to and believe in.
Totally.
With characters that I care about, and for the most part, you know, the guy whose superhero writing I respond to most specifically is Alan Moore, and I you know, I love the America's Best Comic because they were really fucked up. With the exception of Promethea, which I always thought was a bunch of crap. But I really love Top 10. Oh, I love Top 10 so much.
Me too. Oh yeah.
And I like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And I like that stuff. But for the most part, the very nature of superhero comics is it's kind of silly, and the silliness is not enough to sustain me. I mean, bear in mind, you know, we live in a culture right now that's obsessed with superheroes. But, you know, I've
That's all right.
Hold on. It's my idiot assistant. Hold on just a moment, won't you?
The
Bear with me.
By all means.
Calvin, I'm doing an interview for the next 3 or 4 hours. Can I call you back? I'll call you back. Bye.
And now we're back. That's good.
You know, like, as I say, the only genius working in comics today is Kevin Feige. Kevin has managed to monetize to the tune of billions material based on original material, which 99.99% of the people spending those billions have neither any idea that exists, nor if they do, couldn't give a fuck. If you go to a comic book convention today, the ever widening franchise of attendees at comic book conventions these days is mom, dad, and a stroller. And what they're there for, they don't give a shit about comic books. They don't care about me or you, what any of us think. They're looking for a souvenir to commemorate their movie-going experience. And that is the franchise.
Yeah.
What it reflects is the schmuckery of the American and world culture, who will buy into this crap, okay? The diminution of curiosity and critical thinking in the service of narrative, and the fact that genre material has become the mainstay of popular culture. And the genre material has been almost exclusively fantasy, science fiction, and superhero stuff.
Yep.
All of which I was obsessed with as a child.
Sure.
But, you know, at a certain point, you know, it's enough already, you know? I mean, Jeffrey O'Brien, the poet and critic, wrote a wonderful book called Hard-Boiled America, which was basically about the relationship between cover art and the text. O'Brien's wonderful. He's just great. And and in the course of the piece, he says, and this is as close to it's a paraphrase, but it's pretty close to a quote. He says that crime fiction is at least as fantastical as science fiction, but it remains based on an observed reality. And it's that observed reality that I made a pivot, a 180-degree pivot, when I was in my 20s and early 30s. When I was a kid, there used to be a show called Science Fiction Theater, starring Truman Bradley. Where he would sit on his desk and there'd be a Tesla coil and a centrifuge guy. It was like, and it bored the shit out of me. I wanted space opera. I wanted the space opera theater. You know, that
Flash
kind of
Gordon,
stuff.
Buck Rogers.
Exactly. You know, Buck. I mean, when I saw the Buck Rogers serials on channel 11, Larry Buster Crabbe, I love that stuff. But I like I say, I did a pivot in the 70s where I lost my interest completely in space opera. I've tried to interest myself in it, but it just strikes me as so utterly dependent on the kind of the willing suspension of disbelief that a child can provide, that any grown thinking person needs drugs to get to. Just saying. I could be wrong.
Well,
and again, I mean, I owe my career to three things. I mean, the day before my bar mitzvah, but this is all greatest hits today for some reason.
God bless you. No, we'll talk about new stuff. We'll talk about what's going on.
The day before my bar mitzvah, I had $5 in my pocket, and I had German measles and thought they were hives. So I was feverish and hallucinating. And I went to the newsstand to buy new comics. There were no new comics, but I bought the Bob Abbott Ballantine edition of A Finding Man of Mars, number 7 in the John Carter of Mars series. And I had my Saw on the Road to Damascus moment. And it was the finishing thing in the 3 legs that make my career, which is to say, drawing Nazi planes bombing my Hebrew school homework, playing with army men, and then reading Edgar Rice Burroughs. Those three things are why and how I do what I do for a living today.
Crazy.
That's what it's about.
That's awesome, man. Well,
es la verdad. For my Spanish-speaking reader.
What do you think about? Because you're right. Obviously, the tale is it's not the tale because it's making billions of dollars, but the end product of television and film is really, fueling the big two. If they want to stay in the business,
comics exist exclusively these days as ancillary rights material,
right?
And now that we're in this, since we've been living in this Shawshank Redemption, theme park for the past month, and we'll likely be here for a couple more.
Yeah.
What's going to come out of this? I mean, I've been playing with the phrase comics doc. For those of you who actually read a book or have some education or are old enough to remember the Soviet Union, the intelligentsia of the Soviet Union was sustained through much of its history by something called samizdat, samizdat, which was illegally printed, usually frequently hand copied, cranked out in some cases, of news, fiction, Western ideas, sustenance under an authoritarian and grossly cruel regime. Are we looking at that as when and if we get out of this shitstorm, as the future of at least part of what comics may be? I mean, because the victims of this particular hysteria are the retailers, and the reality is, whether anybody cares to admit it or not, is the reality is that the retailers are the actual clients, not the reader. The retailers are the gatekeepers. I've been professionally fucked by retailers who folded and caved in to a bunch of pussy ass whiny mouths about not liking what I did, so they're not ordering. I mean, you'd be stunned by how few retailers are actually buying and putting my stuff on shelves simply because they got scared by a bunch of assholes.
Have you been canceled? Cancel culture?
Oh, fuck yes.
Because I understand.
No question.
I understand divided states of hysteria.
Oh, I'm talking everything that followed it as well.
Crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's
fuck these people. I mean,
fuck these people.
Fuck these anti-intellectual, emotional,
absolutely,
and spiritual cripples. I know who you are. And I'm waiting for at least one of them to confront me face to face. When before the current lockdown took off, I was a regular at comic book conventions, and I'm certain that there had to be one or two of my colleagues who took issue and umbrage with the work that I produced, who had the courage, the conviction, the sense of self, the sense of self-belief to come say to me, "Hey, you fuck, drop dead." Not a fucking one of them. Chicken shits, cowards. And I've been at conventions with at least one of them who was taking it upon herself to literally pillory the fuck out of me. Her and her serial killer looking husband. So these people are cowards. Just completely and totally. They are cowards who cower behind keyboards when they should all die and taste their own blood. The end.
No, I'm sorry that it also spread to retailers. I mean,
I think it affected the retailers most primarily. And again, I'm going to be participating in a number of events over the next couple of days in venues like this, in support of retailers, because no matter whatever they may think of me, I think we need them. Yeah. But I also think they're going to die. They're going to rot on the vine as a result of this. And I think, I think the future is, whether I like it or not, is digital. And I don't like it much because my work depends on a page, and a page is functionally obviated by the existence of digital. Digital, in an odd sort of way, returns us to the most primitive form of comics, the daily newspaper strip, because it's point and click.
Yeah,
it doesn't take into account the holistic nature of the page.
Well, that's an option in terms of reading, and I hear what you're saying about that.
Well, since most comic book readers think that comic books is about drawing pictures as opposed to creating images of narrative value, the guy who called just now, when he first started working for me, actually had the nerve, when I explained that something was pretty but not very good, he insisted that pretty was enough. And no, I'm sorry, no. It's the difference between, say, Adam Hughes and Terry Dodson. Adam is easily misperceived as a pin-up-y kind of artist, but Adam is also wise, wily, and very clever. Adam has an idea. Adam's covers are never simply pin-up-y. They are underpinned by thinking, which is not true of many of the people who do similar work. Okay,
So yeah, you're saying Terry Dobson is not.
I mean, Terry. I'll never draw as well as Terry does. I never will. He draws vastly better than I do, but he doesn't have the cleverness that Adam Hughes has, for example. Adam is a very witty guy, and he's visually witty.
I hear what you're saying. Absolutely, yes. Good Lord.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I believe Dave Johnson is the single greatest comic book cover artist that has worked in this business since Harvey Kurtzman. And again, this is favorite and best shit. Okay, these are my favorites.
These are your opinions.
My three favorite cover artists in the comic book business are the work that Reed Crandall did on Black Hawk at Quality. Those covers just were staggering.
Oh yeah.
What Kurtzman did at EC on the War Books, and finally, what Dave's been doing for the past 20 fucking years. Dave is amazing. He's a staggering talent. Just there's no one better. And interestingly, the guys who kept whooping his ass in these various award shitheads that they have, they're all very, very pandering and very sentimental. Dave's work has a detachment to it that I find really interesting. I love that shit.
Always a boldness, absolutely, and and something that complements the story, but doesn't give you, it gives you a different image. It's the same vibe, but it's Dave's.
He's a smart and witty guy who knows what he's putting down on paper.
Yeah. No, I agree.
We're rambling tangentially.
I'm hoping Terry still comes in and talks to me on work if he sees this.
But I didn't mean to hurt his feelings. I mean,
no. Again, and I understand. Hey, man, again.
Oh, no. I think he's an astonishing talent. I truly do. But
okay.
But I'm talking more about the audience's perception of the material more than anything else.
I see. Okay, I appreciate the clarification.
Really? No, I mean, I think it's true. I mean, I think that people mistake Adam as an example for a pinup artist, and he's more than that. And I think that's an important separation. Ryan Sook is another guy. Ryan is an astonishing talent. He draws phenomenally. I'll never draw as well as he does, but I mean they're all lumped in with Adam, but Adam is transcendent in that regard.
I hear what you're saying. No, and again, like one of my favorite covers that he did for Wonder Woman was that issue, the conversation issue between Lois and Wonder Woman in recent years. It was just this. Yeah, I mean, it really, the image told it all. And I hear what you're saying. That's interesting. All right, before we get into another subject, I want to throw Franco's question in real fast.
Franco?
Yes, indeed.
Franco? How you doing, Franco?
He wants to know if you saw SpiderMan.
Fuck no. Why would I do such a thing? That it's just, it's contemporary to investigation, certainly. But I can't imagine anything it sounded so awful in every way, shape, and form.
I agree.
It just, I mean, please. And I'm a musical comedy queen, as you well know.
Well, that's why, Mr. First Nighter. That's why we.
Well, look, I mean, I'm sitting. I mean, one of the annoying frustrations of my life right now is that I have great seats for West Side Story, Company, and Flying Over Sunset the first week in May. Not anymore.
Oh,
Not
man.
anymore.
I'm sorry. Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
Okay. But no, I mean, oddly enough, and I would I would have killed to have seen Jim Steinman's Batman musical.
I didn't know about it. Wow.
But
Jim Steinman, who wrote
Jim Steinman,
Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell, and Holding Out for a Hero,
and the guy who was Meatloaf's manipulator.
Yep.
Was I'm not sure it ever got as far as workshop, but yeah, Steinman was working on a Batman musical.
I had no idea. That's amazing.
See, that makes sense, but Batman has an operatic sensibility, and Steinman has the perfect talent to go for it. Spider-Man is not for me is not worthy of musical treatment. The Fantastic Four, if you're going to get down to granular bullshit, has more going for it in terms of a musical than Spider-Man does.
That's interesting too.
In an odd sort of. I mean, look. I mean, I posted on Facebook this week that I'd seen Strawberry Blonde and the Crimson Pirate, both of which, to my eyes, screamed out to be musicals. Stage musicals to a great extent.
Interesting. I love Lancaster's Crimson Pirate.
As I said, Strawberry Blonde co-starred James Cagney and Olivia de Havilland.
Okay.
And the Crimson Pirate co-starred Burt Lancaster and his teeth. Because he ate the screen wherever he was, just hamming the fuck out of it. It's so weird to think about that movie. Only 2 years later, he was doing From Here to Eternity.
I want to tell you, I used to be a trapeze artist. I don't know if you knew that. Oh, good. I'm glad. All right, good, Howard. I did enough.
I mean, Lancaster. Lancaster is a product of the Lower East Side of New York, and it's just there's so much of that in his head and in his sensibility. I mean, I understand he was a completely horrible human being.
Really,
I love the work, but again, I heard that Henry Fonda was a terrible human being as well.
Right, I have heard that about.
So it makes a great actor,
Yes.
Apparently, John Wayne was very nice, but I don't know. Okay.
Well, you got to separate the art from the person sometimes.
Many don't.
I know, dude. Hey,
look, I mean, all that bullshit meme that was going on Facebook about take everybody out of the movie and replace them with Muppets except for one performer, and I kept trying to annoy people by saying "Triumph of the Will," but leave Hitler. And and nobody bit. I just come on, have a fight, start a fight. Let's go. Come on. Imagine Triumph of the Will with the cast of the Muppet Show and Hitler. Go for it. Lenny Riefenstahl, come on down.
All right, and again, forgive the greatest hits questions, but I am curious about this as well. They want to know, how was it for you working on with Garth Ennis on Phantom Eagle? What was your research like?
It was a lot of fun. I mean. Understand that drawing biplanes is the greatest punishment any artist can find. They make no sense geometrically or technically. They're nonsense. They're idiot machines. And to his credit, Garth approaches the material the same way I do, which is to say, he writes the entire script. He doesn't write an issue and then wait a while. When I got the script for the first issue, he had written all 5, and I was really grateful for that.
Cool.
And I wrote Garth a note, and I said, "Please tell me right now every single airplane that appears in this script, every single one." And he gave me a list. I then went on Turbo Squid and purchased. Hold on just a moment, won't you, please?
Of course, of course, Howard. All good.
I'm going to be spending the next couple of hours on a video interview. Can I call you back? I will. Bye. Back to you.
Indeed. So, different planes.
So that I bought every single airplane in the CGI model.
What is Turbo? So that's what Turbo Squid
does? Is a website that sells CGI models.
Interesting.
And I gave those models to Don Cameron, with whom I work a great deal. Don is a master of CGI. And I gave him layouts of every single shot of every single airplane in every single issue of the book from 1 to 5, and he fed me back these wireframes. Now these wireframes they're armatures. There's nothing much there, but with photographs and reference, which I'm deeply committed to. I love doing research. We were able to create airplanes. So we traced the planes, scanned the tracings, and then use Photoshop to add GAC, carbon blowback, decals, the Maltese crosses, the rondelles, and that's how that worked. And then in terms of the other research, I actually bought books as opposed to the internet of uniforms. I found some stuff that Garth didn't know about, which was really exciting. and I had a great time with it. I really did. I had not seen Herb's job since it hadn't been published when I was a kid.
Right, Herb
and it
created
blew me away. It was, I mean, not the best draftsman in the world, but graphically really fucking sound. I mean, solid shit, really good. And he drew a biplane a lot better off the top of his head than I ever could. I'll tell you that.
Well, that was his passion project, obviously.
That's true. Well, I was too pussy to go up in the plane. My first wife did. I would not go up in the plane. Yeah.
Wow. Man, Howard, do you still have a big photo file library? Because I remember talking to Gene Colan early in my word balloon time, early 2000s. And I mean, but yeah, do you still have? I would imagine you had one.
I do, but I almost never use it anymore.
Okay.
I mean, I look across my office right now. There's my fireplace, and on the mantle is a stack of material that I pulled out that has not been refiled in a year. Okay, and it's easier to go online.
Sure.
I've got a shitload of great stuff. I mean, I've had 3 photo collections over my career. I had my first. I inherited Woody's by way of Gray, and then I passed that on to another guy.
So it went from Wally Wood to Gray Morrow.
Gray Morrow, yeah.
Go on.
And I built up another one. You know, I left comics pretty much full time in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. When I came back full time in 2002, I'd begun to rebuild a swipe file, a photo file, and sure. I mean. And I cut books up because on my wall, I have a Xerox of the file folder page from the famous artist books by Al Parker. Parker was a great believer in research and reference. And he listed, this is 1954, the 12 files and then the subdivisions of all those files. And I've done obviously a modernized version of it because there's stuff that shows up now that would not have shown up in mainstream magazines in the early 50s. So we use that as a guide. But I've got tons of stuff. But I'll tell you the truth, it's easier to keep current on the web than it is in paper. Because I mean, for years I subscribed to Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Cosmopolitan, GQ, Esquire, Vanity Fair, and for the most part, certainly in women's fashion, very few magazines really maintained actual working clothing. It was all costume.
Yep, or runway stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I if I want to draw someone that's wearing something that's real, you go on the net. I mean, anecdotally, musical theater. A couple of years back, we went to see a show called War Paint in New York City. Which co-starred Christine Ebersole and Patti LuPone. Wow! And it was about the war between Elizabeth Arden and Helena Rubinstein.
Interesting.
And it took place. It was 1935 to 1965.
Okay.
Terrible, an awful show, just dreadful. With a great TV, it should have been great. It was by the same people who did Grey Gardens.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
And it should have been good, and it was inert.
Okay.
We both hated it. And as you walked out, I turned to my wife and I said, the best thing about that is I now know that I can fake up a woman's clothing from 1935 to 1965 without reference. I got the line down.
Cool.
I mean, right now I'm drawing issue 10 of Hey Kids Comics, as I said. And that takes place between 70 and 75. And I'm having to remember to keep the men's hair long, that we can't see ears. I'm having to remember that even women in their 40s and 50s were finding ways to be fashionable and hip.
Okay.
That men in their 40s and 50s were letting their hair grow longer and wearing sideburns.
Leisure suits?
Never. No. I
God bless you, Howard.
Nah.
We don't need to see that.
I remember years ago, I saw a photograph of Gil from the San Diego convention in the late 70s wearing these plaid pants that looked like they were worn by some white supremacist cockbag on the golf course. And it's like, what the fuck? Gil, really? Jesus Christ. So, I mean, bear in mind, I mean, when I worked for Gil when I was 19 and 20, and he wouldn't let me deliver work to the office because he was afraid my physical appearance would speak ill of him. I had hair down on my shoulders, and I dressed like any 19 or 20-year-old in New York City, like a normal person.
How long did you work with Gil?
Only about a year, but we didn't speak for many years. Then we started speaking again in the early 80s and spoke until he died. I got laughs at his memorial, I'm proud to say. And I expect all of you to do the same at mine. So get with it, babe.
Not too soon.
And not at my expense either, fuckers.
Well, so has issue 6 come out yet for Hey Kids?
No. It's been 6, 7, and 8 are delivered and finished.
Okay.
9 is half colored. I'm waiting for colors from my colorist as we speak.
Okay.
And there's no rush because everything's on suspension right now.
Right.
But I'm continuing to work. I mean, I've also delivered the 3rd volume of Times Squared. That's sitting
wondering
banked.
about that as well. Go on.
Yeah. So that's sitting banked, and that's it. So I'm on the first half of 10 right now, and keeping continuity with all these characters is a lot of characters. It's just, it's for an audience that's been worked over and told to take seriously the adventures of a guy who had a bad day when he was 8. Comics that this is a much more complicated and difficult read, and I recognize the fact that I expect more of my audience, and I have failed miserably by simple dint of overestimating the comic book audience on a regular basis, but what the fuck, I've had a good time.
Yeah, but again, your own taste and what you want to write and draw. That's what every artist and every creative should do. And
yeah, but most don't. Most people are perfectly willing to take the king's commission and take that shilling and spend the rest of their career drawing the adventures of Cape Shithead and all this other stuff.
Cape Shithead, yes. Now Dean asks a good question.
Oh, there's Dean.
I
like the fact that Dean even wears his mask on video. That's the best. I'm not wearing a mask. Okay. Who are the writers Howard never got to collaborate with, and who are the ones still alive he'd like to collaborate with? Same question for artists you'd like to write for. I've worked with enough writers that I don't really have to go any deeper than that. I'm done. In terms of artists, I would love to write for Dan Panosian. I truly would. I love Panosian stuff. His work is just so fucking good.
I enjoyed seeing him with yourself and Dave Johnson, and
that was fun.
Video. That was terrific.
I had any right to participate in. I'd like to work with Quesada. Joe's doing some interesting stuff right now as a writer, and potentially Eduardo Risso.
That would be great.
And in all 3 cases, I would very much like to do a romance comic book with those guys.
Well, I felt Hey Kids comics kind of, dovetailed into a bit of romance.
Yeah,
and I'm glad to see it, man.
Well, about a year ago, I began talking about a proposal to revive the DC romance line with at least one title at Vertigo before the Vertigo, disintegrated and melted. There's a really nice anthology series on Amazon called Modern Love, which a lot of people didn't apparently see. And I thought it was incredibly inspiring and it made me cry a lot. I'm a big weeper. I'm deeply sentimental. I was talking to Hillary Barty yesterday on Facebook about the best years of our lives. And I get verklempt even just thinking about the moment where Frederick March comes into the house and sneaks up on Myrna Loy in the kitchen. It's like, it makes I get all worked up.
Oh God, that whole movie.
Right.
What a brilliant.
And again, it's a phenomenally manipulative piece without hurting my feelings, manipulating me with it. And this show made me think a lot about the concept of modern love. I'm an old man, but I love my wife. She owns my ass, and I'm a wholly owned subsidiary of her. And I like that. I kind of dig it. And there are a lot of guys like that. And I think there's stories to be told about that. Maybe I'm not the right guy to do it, but fuck you. I had the idea. Whatever.
Well, but that's why I've liked the evolution, and I can appreciate that you might be like, yeah, whatever, evolution. But I really think that people that grew up as fans in the 70s and 80s and 90s are now turning out comics, even in the superhero genre, that have more personal stories beyond the fists and the powers and everything.
Yeah, but that doesn't serve me or solve my problem, because it remains material that's couched in this melodramatic form that it's kind of like that TV series Hunters, that Amazon series.
Mm-hmm.
Which
how is that?
It was awful, just insufferable.
Wow.
And again, people seem to love it.
I've heard mixed.
I thought it was a complete shit show.
Yeah, I've heard both. Go on.
Well, I was anticipating it with great gusto. And how do you deal with a show in which two extraordinary actors like Dylan Baker and Lena Olin, let alone Carol Kane and Saul Rubinek, out-ham Al Pacino. And I should have listened to what the guy who created the show was talking about at great length, how influenced he was by comic book writing, because it is a perfect example of someone who imitating bad 70s and 80s comic book writing in the service of the diminishment of an important and look, there was a lot of stuff that could have been good there, but it was just absolutely slathered on shitheads. It was all, and I watched every episode with a growing case of, oh my God, this can't be. And I saw the conclusion where it was going 6 episodes in, and I turned to my wife and said, they're not going to do this. They can't do this. And they did that, so that's it. So there you go.
Speaking of war paint, I meant to ask, how have you felt about the FX shows like Feud but even
I find Ryan Murphy's work execrable. I really hate it so much.
Okay.
I watched Feud for 5 episodes because I'm a I thought Susan Sarandon was who I regard as a monster in human form. Was a phenomenal choice to play Betty Davis. That was her playing Betty Davis, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And now
Alfred
Molina was a phenomenal Robert Aldrich. I love that shit. It was that, and Stanley Tucci as Jack Warner, for Christ's sake. Oh my! But again, the Tucci can do anything he wants.
How about the Rockwell Michelle Phillips?
I was disappointed by it. I really was. I expect no less from Sam Rockwell. He's phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
But Michelle Williams really was fantastic. Now,
great Gwen Bearden. Absolutely, man.
Well, but I have to say that I thought the show spent a great deal more time than necessary trying to convince me that she was a genius too, and she wasn't. I don't think she was a genius. I think she was a great Broadway hoofer, and I think Bob Fosse was a complete twat who was also a genius. He was a horrible human being.
Yeah.
And I think the show went on too long, and it kept repeating itself in a lot of ways. Okay. But I thought Ned Cordry was a great choice to play Neil Simon. I thought that just made me laugh enormously. Hey. And again, Norbert Leo Butz. Those of you who've never seen Norbert Leo Butz on stage, who've only known him from television, see a kind of a comic actor of some restraint. When you see Norbert Leo Butz on stage, I am waiting with some anticipation for what Butz does on stage to do on film or television. The first time I saw Norbert Leo Butz on stage, I saw him appearing opposite John Lithgow and Joanna Gleason in the musical version of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Okay.
And at one point, Butz climbs the Stet. And he is insane on stage. He is a physical presence that is humongous and insane. Last year, we saw him playing Alfred Doolittle in what I regard as a grossly overpraised production of My Fair Lady.
Okay.
And he owned the show. He just fucking owned the show.
That's the father. Take me to the church.
Yeah, exactly. Get me to the church on time. Yes.
Yeah.
And he was amazing, just staggering. But I wanted to like Fosse Verdon more than I did because it's about shit I care about.
That's what I figured.
I mean, again, somebody, I think Stuart Kalpin posted a shot of Howard Keel singing "Where's the Life of Late I Led" from the film version of Kiss Me Kate. And I said that's a movie that's it's a movie that's a dreadful movie that's saved by Tommy Rall, Bobby Van, and Bob Fosse dancing with Ann Miller.
Interesting. Yeah, I got to see it. A lot of those.
The movie is terrible. It's just terrible. But if you can catch the sequence, the 3 suitors, it's the 3 guys who were shaking Bianca's hand. They're played by Tommy Rall, Bobby Van, and Bob Fosse. And they're unfucking believable. Okay. 3 great male dancers with this clodhopper hoofer.
Interesting. See, I'm always interested though in those later 50s musicals before they all kind of collapsed, even like if they are bad.
I like which and why.
Well, I'm just interested in seeing what went wrong and what they were.
I don't think anything went wrong. I think what you had was the adjustment in culture. I mean,
sure.
I mean, the fact is, I'm not a big fan of movie musicals. I'm really not. Mm-hmm. I just recently read Janine Bassinger's book about the movie musical, and I realized I like movie musicals more than I thought I did. But a lot of it is that I share her tastes and what she likes and what I like. She, with me, thought that La La Land was a rank piece of shit.
I wasn't a fan either. All right.
I love the introduction. We were sitting in the theater and I see the intro and I went nuts. That opening sequence blew me away, and the rest of the movie just pissed me off enormously.
I think
Whereas
about Moulin Rouge, by the way, as well.
I love Moulin Rouge.
All right.
I saw it. I've seen the stage production twice.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
I know one of the leads, and so I got house seats twice.
Cool.
And he's a comics fan. He surprised me no end by the depth of his comics fandom, which surprised me enormously. But I really, I mean, the most recent movie musicals, the ones I like best. I love what Adam Shankman did with Hairspray. I love that movie.
Yes.
Okay. I love the first 20 minutes of Absolute Beginners.
Okay, sure.
And I really like the film version of Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I'm with you.
I just recently saw a very, very reduced production of Little Shop at the West Side Theater on 43rd Street, which carried it back to its off-Broadway roots. It was tiny, really tiny.
Cool.
6 people in the cast playing all the parts. And it blew me away. It was wonderful. They spent all the money on Audrey, the plant, and it was pretty amazing. And again, tiny, just miniature.
But that works, though. I mean, again,
yeah, it really does.
Go back to the original movie that was made for a time. You know?
We saw when we were in town. We saw that. We saw Moulin Rouge, and both shows are enormously cartoony. One of them a tiny cartoon, and one of them a huge blown up cartoon, Moulin Rouge, and it was they were just swell. They really were just too great.
Would you ever want to do, because of your love of Broadway and everything? I would think, man, that would be great to see you do.
Nah, if I were 35, but no, I'm too fucking old. I'm an end game, man. You know, I mean, I wake up every morning leaving myself out of bed, and is today the day it's going? You know, I don't have any ambition.
Come on,
I'm serious. I mean, no, come on, man. I mean, I'm not. Please. Well,
is it a physical strain?
No, but not at all. But the fact is, I am that guy. I mean, I'm a comics man. It's what I do.
I'm hip.
And by the way, Robert, I hated Les Mis. I think it's a piece of shit. I think it's it's bombast in the service of an empty vessel. But that's just me. But no, I'm not changing careers now. I mean,
I don't mean that. I mean writing a comic book, just like you're doing with Hey Kids, about the Broadway milieu. That's what I'm talking about.
No. I mean, I know comics because it's a world I know. I mean, the irony is that I had some guy complain before he'd seen the book, or I think he'd read the first and decided that I was settling scores. No, I mean, a year before I did the book, I put out I sent out a query to people: send me your anecdotes, and all the anecdotes I got were precisely that. They were all settling scores, which really kind of pissed me off. I really didn't need to hear that because the franchise for me about High K Kids boils down to it may not have really happened, but it's all true. That's the deal. Nobody ever dangled an editor out of a window. That never happened. That's just bullshit. It's a great apocryphal story, and it has to be included. Okay.
Okay, that's the Weisinger story. I mean, I'll
but I've heard every.
Oh, you've heard other editors.
It's been Toth. It's been Kanigher. It's been Julie Schwartz. It's been Shelley Meyer. There's so many names associated with it, and Weisinger was too fast for anybody to dangle him out of a window. You know, he was a big fat guy.
I understand, but no, I was
one more time. You're right.
There you go. I just think the reason why we get up in the morning is because we have something we want to do, and I'm glad to hear that physically it's not an issue for you to still draw.
Not at all. No. I'm sitting here in my studio. Okay, I'm at my drawing table. This tablet is sitting in front of my pencil sharpener on my tabaret. I'm left-handed. There you go. Here's my left hand over here.
There you go.
Over there is my drawing table. Okay, right up here is a page from issue 9. Okay, if you look over my shoulder, right here, rather, you see my Fairburn system books, which is guys of my generation all have the Fairburn system. Okay, and what else is here? If I move a little bit, let me see if I move this way.
Do whatever you want.
You see my ECs over there.
Okay,
and
I feel very person to person in our conversation. I feel like
this is person to right. And you're Edward R. Murrow.
Yes. Hello, Howard. Good to see you today.
That's right. Smoking.
It's all right.
You know, it's okay.
It all works. Man.
One more time. Fucking delight. You know.
Yeah, but Well, someone asked, new Times Square. You mentioned it earlier. So Ryan, it is coming.
Ryan, you got to be paying closer attention, pal.
That's all right. He couldn't join us right at the beginning.
It's called Hallowed Ground Zero, and it's about the destruction of Times Square at the hands of developers.
Cool.
It's my Jane Jacobs tribute.
I don't know Jane Jacobs. Help
because you're Chicago.
Shame on me. Shame on me.
Well, no, Jane Jacobs is the one who managed to stop Robert Moses from building a 5-lane freeway to bisect Greenwich Village.
Oh, wow. I love the Robert Moses story. I mean, what an asshole, but Jesus Christ.
A master builder.
Fascinating.
One of the great assholes in American history.
But truly. Because he ruined New York and, just.
What a twat.
Yeah, man.
Just the consummate asshole.
Destroyed all those neighborhoods. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Look, I mean, when you see the movie version of West Side Story, not the Spielberg version, but the Robert Wise version, which I think is terrible, all those empty streets are now covered with Lincoln Center. That's where Moses threw everybody out because Moses decided that he was entitled to define what was or wasn't a slum, and he just basically threw these people on the street.
Yeah.
And so every time I go to Lincoln Center, I have a twinge of guilt.
I understand.
It passes because it's theater,
Well, and that Ken Burns New York documentary, I think explained it.
Yes.
And also Robert Caro's book, Jesus Christ.
Right.
Oh man, I'm a huge fan. So
well, I grew up with all this shit.
You were watching.
I'm born in 1950, and Moses was already a serious power player. From the mid 1930s on. He didn't identify public transportation as valid. I moved to California this coming October the 6th. It'll be 35 years ago.
Wow.
And I moved from Los Angeles 18 years ago. I live in a small town up the coast, central coast of California. And I live in a purple town in a blue state. And that made all that notwithstanding, I remain at heart and at soul a product of Manhattan. And I'll be buried here. Well, I'm not going to be buried. I'm going to be melted here. But I have dear friends who every so often will look at me and ask me, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And what I'm doing here is, an end of life. It's a good place to be.
I'm glad, man. No, and I was interested in, and in fact watched a great video interview you did with the Dreamer podcast, Omar. And you talked about that time when you left comics and went to LA for TV and stuff like that.
Well, I would not. I'd be living on cat food and Social Security now if I hadn't, because I'm not. I've never been an earner in comic books.
That shocks me, Howard. Honestly.
Flag reached. I sold one copy for every 10 of all the other of Frank's book and Alan Dave's book. I never reached the commercial audience, and I don't have a commercial approach. I don't have one of the keys to success in comic books is a shared sensibility with the audience, and I don't have that shared sensibility. I don't have, and this is self-flattering. Sure, I'm flattering myself a little bit. I don't pander to the audience. I don't flatter the audience's tastes because I don't really care about their tastes. My job is to do something different as opposed to confirm their worst suspicions about the world.
Yeah.
And I'm not a commercial guy. I'm a cult figure. I've often described myself as the Randy Newman of comics. I do an entire body of work that is far less well known than all the shit that people know. And I'm lucky enough that I was able to create enough of a financial bulwark against that lack of commercialism to be able to do what I want. And there's Mike Nagin telling me I'm one of his favorite people in the industry. Hey, Mike.
Mike's a friend. Absolutely.
I'm a true legend. Legend is code for he doesn't sell fucking books, but we like his work, sort of, when he sometimes does what we like. It's true,
Well, I guess, Howard, but all I could say is, and again, I must have been one of those cult guys because direct market, when it was, brand new to me, I should say. But when Flag was coming out, I was excited about a new Flag issue as much as I was about Watchmen and Dark Knight and everything.
I'm not talking about the content and quality. I know how good I am, but this is not false modesty. I know how good I am. Okay, I trust me on this, but I don't have I could not bring the level of conviction that Frank brought to Batman. I mean, just who gives a shit?
Okay.
I just can't care that much about this work. It's adolescent power fantasy junk. And you can slather all the gravitas you want on it. It remains adolescent power fantasy junk.
Tell us about your Superman pitch, because that was...
Oh, you like that?
Well, yeah. And someone had asked about, and I understand why you chose Chicago as your metropolis. Right. It made sense. He's a Kansas farm boy. That's the biggest city.
No, but more than that, it's also these two Cleveland Jews. That's the big city. Chicago is, Gotham is New York City. Gotham is an old name for New York.
Of course.
And everybody, when they, look, Americans hate New York. They do. Come on. Americans hate New York because they regard it as Jewtown. And they hate California because they regard it as Jewtown West. But Europeans, when they think of America, they think of New York and California. Okay. And I try to explain to Europeans who've never been to the States that the landscape that exists between New York City and Southern California is filled with people who hate you and hate me. Okay. But in the 1930s, Chicago was as important an urban landscape as New York.
That's right.
Okay. In an era before effective transcontinental air travel, Chicago was a travel hub.
Absolutely.
And I went to school in Chicago in the late 60s, and I really love Chicago. I really do. I was freaked out. I was there a couple of years ago, and I was out in Rosemont, the mobbed up suburb. And I took a train. I took the L into the city, and because my daughter-in-law, her parents they live in Chicago. So
okay.
My wife spent the day with them. She'd never been. She was touristing in the town. And I got out of the L and I grabbed a cab on State to go over to their place. They live in the old Playboy building.
Wow.
And
cool.
And I was freaked out by the fact that the cab ride up the river was
Lakeshore Drive, yeah, or
no, not Lakeshore Drive, not the lake. I'm talking, but along the river.
Okay.
That the skyline had been totally transformed. It's an entirely different skyline, much more transformed than New York, for example. And but yeah, Chicago is what it's all about. For Superman. And also Superman is as quintessentially a mid-American concept as you can get. Superman is the ultimate immigrant story written by two second-generation Jews who really, really got it and understood that it was all about finding a beard and living behind it.
Oh, you meaning the to anglicize?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like think Yiddish, go British.
I understand.
And that's Neil Simon.
Yes.
But Jules Pfeiffer said it brilliantly that Superman did not come from planet Krypton; he came from planet Poland. One of the projects that I've been playing with recently. That is, again, grabbing all the commercial gold I can find, right? A story about a guy who literally deserts under fire from Pershing's army in 1917 to go east across Europe to get to Russia in the midst of the revolution.
Wow!
To commit a murder of revenge on a noble who ruined his parents' life. And again, the audience that wants to read about Captain America and Adam Strange is going to just leap to their feet for this piece of shit, But I fuck him. I don't care.
I understand. All right, Paul Stevens, real fast because I am interested.
Paul Stevens.
He wanted to know if you saw.
I did not, and I there was nothing about it that interested me enough to see it. The idea of one more time, in putting this adolescent junk into the real world and trying to, simply. I haven't seen it. I have no interest in seeing it. And hold on a second. Please,
of course, no problem.
Hey, I'm being interviewed by a wonderful guy from Chicago. Can I call you back? I will. Did you like that picture I sent you? I knew you would. I'll talk to you later. I knew you're an idiot. I'll talk to you later. Bye. I didn't see the movie. I didn't have any interest in seeing the movie. I like Joaquin Phoenix, but everything I read about the movie seemed to me as it read as someone basically remaking Taxi Driver and King of Comedy with the implication of value without anything really to say, And I didn't care that much. There was enough other shit to say.
I keep getting divided about it, and those are my problems with the movie. It's like, and I get the generation who didn't grow up seeing Taxi Driver or King of Comedy.
They didn't have to grow up to see it. It's on record. I mean, there's the problem right there.
Go, buddy.
That what you've got is you're talking about an audience that resists curiosity, that has a willful ignorance. And as I've said more than once recently, stupidity is an endowment. Ignorance requires work. And it's important to understand that this material does not simply emerge as if from the brow of Zeus, that it has history, that it has context, that it has precedent, and that following precedent, finding work that pre-exists this work and seeing its value. Anybody of any creative value stands on the shoulders of giants. And you have to see the work that has influenced the material that's being done now. This absence, this cultural amnesia must be put away, certainly by people with serious interest in popular culture. But it isn't, because there's a laziness and a willful ignorance that supports this belief system that there seems to be a generational gap in acknowledging the very idea of influence. As if Raphael Kayanant had never seen Barry Smith's work.
I hear you, man.
Sure, of course. Yeah, really,
No,
or Wayne Howard had never seen Woody's stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, and I'll tell you, man, I get it, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. But I also think it's not with malice. It's just the way that media has changed. These kids grow up, and again, I'm with you on the porch yelling at the sky. But these kids grow up with their own content in a way that we never did. My generation certainly had more to view and consume than your generation.
But what you're talking about is a conditioned contempt. That is, shrug all you like.
I'm saying, like, they're being served with this extra stuff.
I had a responsibility as a young man, okay, to learn that what I liked, what I didn't like, had history.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
And if you're talking about it, if you're willing to forgive an entire generation, and you are apparently, because you just said so, you're willing to forgive an entire generation for its willful ignorance by dint of the fact that it's got its own content, then we're in the same boat forgiving mine, for having its own moronic ideas, which many of us have outgrown. Okay, we have a responsibility to outgrow our adolescence. That's what maturity is about, and part of maturity is understanding that history has value and context. Okay, it's really easy to convince oneself that one's creative impulses are personally and completely derived from within, which is ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. We are a font of learned and screened information, and we learn. I mean, look, I worked for Gil Kane for a year. I was a fan of Gil Kane's from the time I was a little boy. I never did a lick of actual drawing for Gil Kane as his assistant, but I learned more from that fucking year watching him work, hearing him talk about the work that he did, and how he manifested his intellect in the work on the page. As hyperbolic as the work was, as separate and distinct as it was from his own ambitions, I still feel that was the single most valuable year of my adult professional life, in terms of learning how to do what I do for a living.
I hear you, man.
Okay, the laziness and lack of curiosity that informs mainstream comics is an appalling reality. It really is.
You're right in it. It goes beyond.
I know I'm right. But it doesn't mean shit to a tree.
It goes beyond comics. It is pop culture.
Yeah, but I work in comics. It's what I'm talking about.
I'm hip.
Okay.
I'm hip.
I mean, La La Land is a perfect example. It's a musical for people who have no understanding of what a musical film is about.
Right.
Yes. I'm a big fan of Ryan Gosling. I've been a fan of his since he played the Yeshiva Brother in that Canadian picture about the skinhead who turned out to be a Yeshiva kid. And I love and look, what's her name? Emma Stone. The minute I saw her in Easy A, she was the shit.
Yeah, she's great.
fantastic.
No,
she's
great.
wonderful. She really is.
But they're playing it. They're playing it musical as opposed to really understanding.
But you know, it's just it demonstrates it's the enfranchisement of amateurism. It's the idea of anybody can do this. It's that, you know, I mentioned I did a C3 thing in Long Beach this past January, and I talked about a piece that had appeared in the New York Times the week previous, a comic strip. When the New York Times when the New York Times started paying attention to comics, and it was like what Mao said about his gun: reach for it. You know, mentioning culture, I'm going. You know, whatever. There was this piece by this guy who's I forget his name. He was apparently a film critic, which could mean anything, like he had a YouTube page or whatever the fuck the shit is.
Exactly.
And who decided to become a graphic novelist. Like, you know, I woke up one morning and I'm gonna be a shoe salesman. You know, that's what I'm gonna do. It utterly and completely diminishes the existence of craft. It completely ignores the idea that this requires work, that it is work, that is career based. When I did the Marvel seminars for 6 years, the first day consisted entirely of beating the living shit out of this hobbyist notion that this is simply an extension of drawing comics on your mother's cutting board in the middle of the night while everybody else is asleep and you're sitting in the dining room listening to rock and roll records. The truth of the matter is, there's a language, there's a syntax, there's a vocabulary, there's a craft. Okay. And this let's put on a show with Mickey and Judy bullshit's just got to fucking stop. You know, every time I go on the Nib, that comics website, whatever it is,
I don't know.
It's like my head explodes. It's just the earnestness supported by ignorance is just not serving me in any particular way.
What the fuck's a Nib? I don't know that.
Oh, you don't know? I'll email. Next time I get one, I'll forward it to you.
Because man, no,
it'll make your head. Actually, it'll make your head explode too. Because there'll be two of us. You know.
No, Howard, I'll confess to you, I'm teaching kids audio production at a great media college, Columbia College in Chicago.
My alma mater.
I had no idea. That's fantastic. Jesus, Howard, have they ever asked you back to talk?
Fuck no, I dropped that after 4 months.
Oh. Well. It's
when I was there, Bill Russo was the director of the music department. Bill Russo was the great arranger for the Stan Kenton Orchestra. Wow. Staunton Lind was the head of the history department. 1968, babe.
It is a great.
It was in one building. It was in one building next to the Time Life Book Depository, on the Lakeshore Drive. It was 60611, and it was around the corner from a diner called Sherman's. Okay. And there was still a chain of corner joints called DeMars.
Okay.
Which sold pork chop sandwiches with red eye gravy. I think it was a Jewish-owned franchise that served the black community of Chicago. And I ate there all the time because it was the greatest fucking food ever. You know, I loved it. I just loved it. See, that we digress.
That's great, man. No, I love it, man. And I was going to say, I gave them because
they're now at the Old Pick Congress, right?
They're on 600 South Congress. Yes, so they are right around Congress. Yeah, you know. Right. So and Ida B. Wells. Now they've renamed Congress after this very great woman, Ida Wells. Mm-hmm. But yeah, man. No, I gave them. I've given them commercials to make and little drama vignettes to put together so they can understand. Layering a multi-track audio beyond music and stuff. And I gave him a Seinfeld to cut up into a 60-second commercial. And one kid goes, I beg your pardon. Sorry, I should have done this. But it's only me. I'll be washing my hands when we're done.
Just wipe the screen.
Exactly. Anyway, I'm like, this one kid comes in and goes, all right, so this Seinfeld show, was it a sketch show? And I'm like, no, it was a sitcom. I never seen it. And I'm like, God, you kids are lucky. I'm like, all right, so I've got 12 kids in the class. I'm like, all right, who's seen Seinfeld? 3 kids. I'm like, Jesus, you kids are lucky I didn't give you an I Love Lucy episode to cut up because it would have been the same experience.
Next time you have that thought, just try Amos and Andy. See what happens.
Oh, good Lord, yes.
Actually, what you want to do is give him an Amos and Andy episode to run alongside Big Bang Theory.
I almost touched my face. Yes, you're exactly, man. Well, and again, oh God, man, we don't even have to talk about how bad sitcoms have gotten. Good Lord, it's sad.
I mean, I what are you watching now?
Good question. Because I'm trying to make stuff during this time.
You watching what We Do in the Shadows?
No, but I really want to, both the show and I still haven't seen the movie. Shame on me. I know. Is it great?
It's phenomenal. It
Good to
truly is
know.
great.
I love the guy who's also another IFC show that he
Year of
just
the
did.
Rabbit.
Yes. And I saw a couple episodes of that. That guy, he
Dynamite.
was in IT Crowd. I love that guy.
No, he's wonderful. Matt something.
Unbelievable. So
He's
God, that
fantastic.
IT episode where they do the aerobics routine from the horrible movie Perfect with John Travolta and Jamie Lee Curtis, and he's basically imitating John Travolta. It's so.
I've got that queued up, and I've only seen one episode of it. I'm a big fan of Chris O'Dowd.
Chris O'Dowd's amazing.
I love Chris O'Dowd.
Richard, very long last name. I don't remember how to say it. Is excellent as well. It's a great show. It's an amazing.
The last sitcom I watched with any real commitment was Community.
Of course, sure.
And I could never convince any of my more banal friends to watch the show. I love the show. I love everything about the show. What supports my belief that Dan Harmon is a genius is that none of those people, with the exception of Donald Glover and Alison Brie, have really gone on to do anything special. I'm a big fan of Glow.
Glow is great, sure.
As much as anything else, because that Brie is obviously an incredibly generous person, in that she could allow someone like Betty Gilpin to emerge as the star of the show, and Gilpin is staggering in the show. Have you watched Glow?
Yes, I'm a big fan of Glow. No, I think it's interesting. And again, I of course remember when it was happening, so that's part of
right. Exactly.
I enjoyed the last season of Curb. Your enthusiasm.
I hate.
You don't like Larry, huh? Hilarious.
Years ago, it's the first or second season it just completed, and I was having dinner with my wife, my son and his wife. It's before Baz was born. So it's over 8 years ago, and John, my son, was going on about how much he loved the show, and I said, I hate that show. I hate those kind of Jews. And my wife said, and I live with it every fucking day of my life. And that shut the conversation down right off like that. I'm not a fan. I've never seen Seinfeld. I'm not interested in those kind of people.
How about The Trip? The Steve Coogan Rob Brydon. I really like it. And as a mimic, I love learning how to do Bloody Michael.
I love those guys. I adore those guys. Look, I mean, I'm a huge Steve Coogan fan and have been from word one. I've seen all the Trip stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, Paul, I have seen all the Trip.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Big fan. No, I'm the same way. So I mean, while I'm making stuff, I found myself like just having in the background old stuff to just kind of be wallpaper while I'm editing and putting these kinds of conversations together. Because you'll forgive the comparison, but what I'm trying to do with this is with these talks, and I really appreciate you being part of it as well. I kind of feel like, all right, well, everyone's pencils down and the comics community is kind of on suspension until we're back to whatever.
That may be, but I'm putting in a full work day.
Well, that's what I mean. And
I've got 12 pages in my hand. I have like Joe McCarthy said, I have 57 members of Congress. I have 12 pages of pencils here.
Cool.
I have 6 illustrations that I'm doing for a website. So I'm working. And
I'm trying to entertain. I mean, I feel like Bob Hope on the home front. Hey, while our boys are fighting the good fight, I got
Bob Hope impressions.
Highlight stretch. Can't help it. Dave Thomas taught me that voice.
The only one. The only look. He broke the barrier of Bob Hope impressions.
Cracked the code.
Nobody could do it.
And that's why Coogan and Brydon, when they're dueling Michael Caine's, I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, all right. That's kind of
Absolutely. I love that shit.
I love it too, man.
Listen. I speaking of work, I have to get back to it.
I was going to say, buddy, absolutely. No. This was
so. Let's wrap it up with one more question, and I will fade into the ether like the grown man I am.
No problem. All right, for one last question, I will be selfish and ask, like, what got you to go to First Comics? Because I just had this conversation with Mike and got his impressions of First Comics as it all got started and stuff, and what was Flag something that was burning in you, and you were just looking for a place to put it? I mean, how did Flag happen?
Well, I'd been driven out of comics by Jim Shooter, in a raging argument that took place on a Good Friday. So there's nobody there, so nobody witnessed it. So it was his story to be won. I went off and made my living doing paperback art for a couple of years, and the bottom fell out of that because of Reagan's policies. That too complicated going. Reagan was a president a couple of years back. To those of you of your audience who forgot that, the guy who basically set us on the path of shitstorm that we're in now.
Well,
and so fuck you, Reaganite cocksuckers out there. Hey, and first, Mike called me up. I knew Mike from DC. We'd worked together. And Mike called me up and said, we're starting a new company. We have some money to spend. And the truth is, I was deeply in the hole because I'd worked for Byron Price for a couple of years. And, no one ever made a dime working for Byron except for Byron. And it was the money they offered me was enough to get me out of the hole. And I know people hate hearing this sort of stuff, but that's the truth. And Flag represented a kitchen sink idea that I'd been playing with that started with my rage at the Ronald Reagan administration, and at the plutocracy that was beginning to take over the United States. And that's where it's at. And I wanted to do something about geopolitics. I wanted to do something that combined my enthusiasm for Terry and the Pirates, Gunsmoke, and Maverick.
Those
are the three primary things that support the franchise.
Jesus.
And a small town environment with a wise guy at the center, and an ensemble cast that can be moved around and changed up. And that was that, and they bought it. It had the original. I mean, I played with earlier titles, but Flag is what finally ended up centered down. And the lesson I learned from that was that I was as good as I hoped to be, and that I wasn't the journeyman that I thought I was. I was astonished by how shitty the book looked after I left. I couldn't believe they couldn't find anybody to continue it with any kind of measure of quality, because I'd been so self-loathing and so hating for so long that when I finally achieved some genuine ambition, I was taken aback, and I set a bar for myself that I'd never been able to slip below. It's kind of pissing me off. There are a lot of guys who can really laze the shit out of this stuff, and I can't be lazy, because to be as good as I am, I have to work really hard. I'm not naturally skilled or talented. I'm serious. I'm a set of learned skill sets. It's one of the things I share with Gil, in that Gil started out. I mean, he was nowhere nearly as shitty as I was when I started. He was really shitty, but nowhere near as shitty as I was. But he learned how to do what he did, and I in turn learned how to do what I do. And there you have it.
Does the current Trump administration inspire new Flag stories, or regardless of their Flag?
I've written the sequel to Divided States of Hysteria, which has been almost precluded by reality. The collateral damage that Image took for the assault on Divided States by the swarm of people who didn't read it but just knew that it was terrible just because they could feel it, because their feelings were really important. Set them off, and it's one of the reasons I did the Hey Kids comics, is because they stepped away from Divided States. So maybe sooner or later, the script, I'm pretty happy with the script. It's pretty good.
I saw the IMDb page for you, and it said that Flag was being considered in development. That's
long gone. No, I mean, I obviously, I lost a bet in a big way. I've never been able to get my stuff out of the starting gate in terms of option. Flag was optioned and then re-optioned by Europa Corp, which found itself both losing a shitload of money on Valerian. Who wanted to see that movie anyway?
Yeah.
And then of course the sexual harassment accusations aimed at Luc Besson. So Flag is once more footloose and fancy free. And I'm convinced that in my lifetime nothing will ever happen with this stuff. The reason being that comics is perceived by the buyers, by the merchant people, the representatives, the Hollywood studios, as a genre as opposed to a medium, and that precludes it lumps in everything that means Archie, Reed Fleming, and Batman are all of the same ilk, simply because they're delivered in the same delivery system. And my wife, who has never read a comic book in her life, has been hawking me China for years to write a novel. I keep explaining that I'm a comics man. I tell narratives through the concept, the synergy of visuals and text. And what I don't read comics with any particular pleasure anymore. I read fiction. I read nonfiction. I go to the movies. I watch television. But I love the use of comics as a narrative. And by the way, Chuck, I have no interest whatsoever in Archer. And Charlie Day playing what? Raoul, really, or Luther Ironheart.
Well, obviously John Hamm would be Reuben, but yeah, I guess so.
No, I mean, for me, I think Reuben Flagg should be played by James Wolk. I think Wolk would make a really interesting Flagg.
Okay.
If you push come to shove, but it's never going to happen.
Do you know my guy Robert Meyer Burnett? Don't you? The filmmaker, he made Free Enterprise back in '99, and he's a.
I know the work, yeah.
Okay, because I know he's a massive fan, and he's he produced Agent Cody Banks, but don't hold that against him.
I don't remember that.
He's a
That
real
was a show
fan.
that wasn't Parker Lewis Can't Lose.
That's right. He I know he's a massive fan of yours, and I'm surprised he hasn't introduced himself to you at a convention. I'm sure he will eventually.
Maybe he has, but I'm old. Shit slips, man.
No, it's all. Well, I'm glad you remember me, and I'm always glad that you remember to talk to me.
Well, look, that evening we spent in Skokie was just an absolute pisser. I loved it. I had such a good time.
I felt the same way, buddy. And
really
seriously,
did.
man. Again,
that was. I mean, I bonded. That was also the weekend I met Charlie Pelto for the first time.
That's cool.
And I think Pelto was doing really honorable work in the service of maintaining the history. So go figure.
I hope we can do this again in a couple
Moi
months.
aussi, as they say in France.
Well, and I know you're in hot demand, and I'm sure you're doing a million.
I'm a beloved figure. I'm looking at my calendar right now. What's up next? Tomorrow.
Yeah, where are you doing?
Today, tomorrow, I'm off tomorrow.
Okay.
But Thursday, I'm doing a sit down with Piscor and Rugg.
Oh, that's great, man. They're terrific. I love that.
I love the Piscor.
Good
the Piscor boy he's so funky. And then on Friday, I'm doing a sit down with Andy Schmidt for the retailers.
Oh, excellent.
And then Sunday, I'm doing a Hero Initiative thing for to raise bucks for the Hero. And speaking of Hero,
would you talk about that?
I would strongly encourage you guys out there to remember that most comic book artists and writers are morons, and they have no capacity for planning for their own fucking future. So they're now finding themselves at shit's end. So help out these assholes. They're idiots.
Well, it's great that you're doing it. It's the Hero Initiative. If people don't know, and I'm sure they do, that you are setting up for donations to the Hero Initiative. Nice one-on-one chats with fans, and people can really have a dream conversation with Howard Chaykin.
And I'm fun, as you can obviously tell.
Clearly.
I'm a joy to behold.
Hey, man, don't kid yourself. And I know people have been enthralled watching live, and I know thousands more are going to hear and watch this on the YouTube channels. Seriously, man, as always, a great conversation. I'm thrilled.
Thanks, John. You're very kind, and again, kinder than I deserve. Hey, all you guys have a great day. Enjoy the incarceration, and if we get out of this shit alive, come say hi to me on campus. I'll be at conventions sooner or later, or dead, depending on how things play out. But again, one more thing: laughs at my fucking memorial. You have been warned.
Absolutely, man.
Have a great day, guys.
Stay safe and healthy. Thank you, buddy.
Do the same, John. Thanks again.